In this video, I'm going to share with you a simple strategy to outrank 99.9% of other businesses in your area. Now, when it comes to ranking in Google, the question is, where do we want to put our focus? And we actually found the definitive correct answer to this by working with a client very recently. So he's a DUI attorney and he is in Orange County, California, and he ranked really well for basically every keyword you could dream of for DUI in Orange County. So for example, DUI lawyer, DUI attorney, Orange County DUI attorney. His business ranked so well that he was ranked #1 in both the Google Maps, the local 3-pack, and also below the maps in the organic rankings. And as a result of these rankings, his phone was ringing off the hook. He was getting 50 qualified leads every single week. And his firm does DUI and they charge $5,000 per DUI. So you can imagine how much money he was making by ranking #1 in Google. So Orange County, California is a very competitive market, and one day one of his competitors decided that they didn't like that they couldn't beat our client. So they decided to contact Google and report our client's Google business profile listing as fraudulent, as not a real business. So as a result, Google suspended his Google business profile. He immediately disappeared from the maps. Now, his website still ranked #1 in the organic listings below the maps for all those keywords that I listed before and many other keywords. However, something really strange happened. Like someone flipped a switch, his phone calls completely stopped. He went from getting 50 qualified leads every single week to not getting a single lead. So we immediately sprung into action. We showed Google all the documentation that they needed to prove that he was in fact a legit business, and they unsuspended his listing. As soon as they unsuspended his listing, he went back to #1 in the Google 3-pack, in the Google Maps, and like somebody flipped a light switch, his phone calls started up just like they never stopped. And that proved to us definitively that if you want to get phone calls and new customers from Google, you have to rank in the Google 3-pack. You have to rank in the Google Maps. The organic listings just don't produce phone calls. So if you want to rank in the Google 3-pack so that you can get more customers and make more money, you have to understand, first of all, how does Google determine who even shows up in the Google 3-pack? Well, according to their website, there's 3 things that they use to determine who shows up and who doesn't show up in the Google 3-pack. The first is proximity to the searcher. How close are you, or how far away are you from the person that is actually performing the search? Now, there's not a lot that you can do here, so we don't really pay too much attention to this. The second is prominence. How prominent are you on the internet? This means, do you have your business citations built out? And also, what websites link to your business? The third thing that determines whether or not you show up in the Google 3-pack is relevancy. How relevant are you to the thing that the searcher is searching for? So our goal, whenever we're trying to get a client in the Google 3-pack, is first of all, we're trying to increase their prominence, and then we're also trying to make them as relevant as possible to as many keywords that are associated with their business as we can possibly do. Now, I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule, which means that 80% of your gains are made from 20% of your effort. So in this video, I'm not going to show you every single thing that we do, because there's literally hundreds of things that you can do to impact where you rank in the Google 3-pack. What I'm going to do in this video is show you the few things that we do, the 20%, that will give you about 80% of the results. Now, if you do everything I say in this video, you're very likely to show up higher in the Google 3-pack. Not guaranteed, but very likely to show up. And that means that you're going to have a lot more visibility, which means you're going to get a lot more phone calls, a lot more leads, and ultimately you're going to make a lot more money. Now, this first tip is so powerful that I have literally never met a business that has done this and not made more money. In fact, when I talk to businesses and they say, I don't have any money for marketing, I don't have any money to invest in ads or anything, this is the first thing that I tell them to do, because if you focus on this, you will make significantly more money. In fact, Bazaar Voice Network did research and they found that this strategy will increase your revenue by 44%. So what is the strategy? Well, it's getting more reviews. Bazaar Voice Network found that any business that gets 200 reviews or more will increase their revenue by 44%. And they found that after analyzing 50 million reviews. Now, the reason this works so well is because, as I said, one of the 3 things that Google uses to determine who ranks in the Google 3-pack is relevancy. And Google pulls relevancy from 2 different places: your website content and your reviews. Now, you can write whatever you want on your website, so Google actually gives more weight to what other people say about you in your Google reviews. So if you can get Google reviews that have words, phrases, keywords, and synonyms in them that are both relevant to your business and also your geographical location, Google's going to boost your relevancy way up up. And then when someone searches for a business like yours, they're going to rank you higher. And then once you rank higher, people are going to see your listing. They're going to see that you have a high number of reviews. And then that's going to make them pick up the phone and call you. Because not only is appearing in the Google 3-pack important, but having the highest number of reviews in the Google 3-pack is important. We once had a client that was ranking really well in the Google 3-pack, but they weren't getting many phone calls, and we couldn't really figure out why, because there was lots of search volume for the keywords that they were ranking for. So I was looking at their listing one day, and I realized that they had 5 reviews, and the other 2 businesses that were in the Google 3-pack with them had 10 reviews and 15 reviews respectively. So I called the client and I said, hey, can you get 20 reviews to give you 25 reviews? And that would give you the highest number of reviews in the Google 3-pack. So they went and did it, which meant that they now had 25 reviews and the other 2 businesses had 15 and 10 reviews. So now our client had the highest number of reviews. The next week was the busiest week in the history of their business. That's how important this is. So how do you get more reviews? And then how do you make sure that the reviews have these words, phrases, keywords, and synonyms in them? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to assign somebody on your team the task of review getter. You have to make it their responsibility, and they should be compensated every time they get a review. They should get anywhere from $10 to $50, maybe even $100, depending on your business, for every review that they get. Now, you need to look at this not as an expense, but as an investment, because you're going to pay them one time to get the review, but that review is going to stay on your Google business profile for the next 10, 15, 20 years even, and continue bringing you business day after day after day. So this is a very, very great ROI for your money. Now, you can assign one person on your team, or you can give your entire team this bonus. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is that somebody has some sort of incentive to get these reviews on a regular basis. Now, when they're asking for reviews, they should ask everyone. Anyone that your business provides any sort of value to should get a review. Now, you've probably experienced asking somebody for a review and they say, yeah, I'll do it, but then they don't actually leave the review. You need to provide a reason that you need the review. And when you actually provide a reason, you're much more likely to get people to comply with your request. There was a researcher at Harvard named Ellen Langer, and she found back in the 70s that people are much more likely to comply with a request if there is a reason behind the request. And she proved this by going to the library, and there was always a line for the Xerox machine. So she wanted to test what could she say that would get people to allow her to cut to the front of the line and make her copies first. So the first thing she did is she walked to the front of the line and she said to the person in the front of the line, hey, listen, I'm late for class. I have to make a few copies. Do you mind if I cut in line? And she did this a bunch of times, and something like 95% of the time she was allowed to cut to the front of the line. And that makes sense. It was actually a really good excuse. But then she went back with a weaker reason and she said, hey, can I cut to the front of the line? I need to make some copies. Well, this wasn't a great reason. Everybody was there to make copies, but still she was able to cut to the front of the line like 85% of the time. So she thought, okay, well, maybe people are just nice. So then she went back and she cut to the front of the line, but she didn't give a reason. She just said, hey, can I cut to the front of the line? And only 60% of people let her cut to the front of the line. Now, the interesting thing is that just by asking, she was able to cut to the front of the line 60% of the time. But by giving a reason, even a weak one, she increased her chances of cutting to the front of the line by 50%. So that's why it's important that you give a reason that you need the review. And there's lots of reasons that you can give. There's a car wash in Tampa called Woody's, and they have 77,000 reviews. And what they say is, instead of tipping, when you leave a 5-star review with my name in it, the company will tip me. That's a great reason. Another reason that I tell my clients to say, who are mostly lawyers, is that hiring an attorney can be one of the most important and difficult decisions that a person ever makes. So would you help lots of people, potentially thousands of people, make one of the most important decisions of their life by leaving us a 5-star review? Whatever the reason is, you just have to give them a reason, and you are much more likely to get the review. Now, another reason people don't leave reviews is writer's block. They just don't know what to say. So along with the reason for the review, you also want to give them some prompts. So I typically tell my clients to say something like, a lot of times people want to leave a review, but they're not sure exactly what to say. We found that the most helpful reviews typically answer the following 5 questions. Number 1, what was the problem that you had before you hired us? Number 2, why did you pick us over all the other options in the market? Number 3, what did we do for you? Number 4, what were the results? And question number 5, how did these results impact your life? Now, when you send these prompts, what's going to happen is, first of all, you're going to get more reviews because people won't suffer from writer's block. But second, you're going to naturally get those words, phrases, keywords, and synonyms in your review, which is going to increase your relevancy and make you rank much higher. Now, the other cool thing this is going to do is it's going to get people to tell a story in the review. There's going to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And when people are researching you and reading your reviews, they're going to read these stories and they're going to see stories that are similar to their situations in your reviews, which is going to increase the certainty that you can get them a great result as well, because people believe that if you help somebody similar to them, then you can help them as well. So if you did nothing other than just get as many reviews as humanly possible, there's a very, very good chance that that alone could make you rank pretty high in the Google 3-pack. In fact, we have a client who is in Mesa, Arizona. He got 530 reviews in a 30-day period, and he is absolutely crushing it. He's outranking all of his competitors simply by just getting Google reviews, and it didn't cost him anything other than some effort. Now, the second strategy that's going to allow you to outrank 99.9% of local businesses is something that really only takes 5 seconds to do, but if you get it wrong, it's really going to make it very difficult for you to ever outrank anyone. Now, you're going to want to watch this entire section, because if you do this wrong, you could end up getting your Google business profile suspended, and I don't want to see that happen to you. Now, this strategy is so effective that it actually used to be one of my favorite sales techniques. Many years ago, when I was doing sales for my marketing agency, this was the easiest way for me to prove that I could help people by actually helping them. I would call businesses up and I would talk to them and I would say, hey, you have this one thing wrong, and if you change this one thing on your Google business profile, you're likely going to rank a lot higher. This was my favorite strategy because I knew that half the time I did this, it was going to make them increase their rankings almost immediately, which is going to make me look like a rock star, even though this is something that's really simple and it's really just common sense. So when you set up your Google business profile, you have to select your primary category, and that's the category that your business falls into. The problem is that most businesses have the wrong primary category selected, and if you have the wrong category selected, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to rank for anything. So the first thing you need to do is go to Google and do a search for your most important keyword, and then look in the map section at the businesses that are showing up. And then you can look at the category that is next to each one of these businesses. This is the primary category that you want to set for your business. Then go to Google and search for your business and see what your primary business category is set to. A lot of times you're going to find that your primary business category is not set to the correct category. Now, as you're searching other businesses, you might see multiple categories that people have selected. What you need to do is the one that is most prevalent for the ones that are ranking highest, that needs to be your primary category, and then you can have up to 9 additional categories, and you can add those as your additional categories. That way Google knows what type of business you are, and you're going to appear more relevant for those other categories as well because you've selected them as your additional categories. Now, I want to warn you that there is a chance that if you change your primary category, you may have to re-verify your Google business profile, and this does kind of suck, but it's worth it once it gets re-verified with the right category. Now, you also need to be careful that you don't select a category that's wildly different from what you currently are listed as. Otherwise, you actually could trigger a suspension, and we've seen that happen before. If that happens, you need to go to Google, search local help, and there's a page in there where you can actually contact them and they can take care of you so that you can get your listing unsuspended. Okay, so now this final strategy to outranking 99.9% of local businesses is something that anybody can do. It's super easy, and the best part is you only have to do it one time. As I said, Google uses 3 things to determine where you rank in the Google 3-pack. There's proximity to the searcher, there's relevancy, and then the third thing is prominence. How prominent are you on the internet? One of the easiest ways to increase the prominence of your business is by building out as many business profiles as possible. These are also known as citations. Now, there's tons of different websites where you can create business listings, but we always want to start with the core listings, and that's going to be Bing, Yelp, Apple, and Facebook. We always start with those first. And it's very, very important that you have your business name, your address, and your phone number the same as it's listed on your Google business profile. We want consistency across the board with all of these. Next, we want to start building out some industry-specific directories. So, for example, if you're in medical, then you want to make sure you have a health grades listing. If you're in travel, then you want to make sure that you have TripAdvisor. If you're in legal, then you want to make sure that you have Avo and FindLaw and Justia and different things like that. And then you can move on to the more general business sites like Yelp yellowpages.com, Foursquare, MapQuest, other business sites like that. And then finally, we'll build out additional platforms like Better Business Bureau, LinkedIn Business Profile, and really anything else that we can find that's relevant. The key is across all of these citations, you want to make sure that you have your name, your address, and your phone number consistent everywhere. That's one of the most important things you can do. So if you use all three of these strategies, you will very, very likely outrank 99.9% of all the other businesses in your market, and you will make so much more money. Try it out, and you can thank me later.